Okay, we'll go ahead and start, shall we, for Sunday school this morning. Thank you for joining us. Shall we start with a word of prayer? Dear God, we thank you for the blessings of this day and blessings you give us. We pray for our worship community today and our community here at Ascension. Thank you for helping us to learn the lessons from the reformers around us. And today we pray blessings on Bono and his family, and thank you for that inspiration. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Good morning. So I'm going to do the very best I can to honor the intention of what I publicized here. And so that is, today we're going to talk about Bono, who's famous for two things. One is he's a rock star. So he's an artist and has been probably his whole life. Became a professional artist in 1977, 1978. Throughout this talk, I'm going to just show the milestones of that art. What albums were released, or some of the kind of milestones that were there. Secondarily, we have an entire world of people that are inspired by his advocacy. And that sense of advocacy has been so effective that it's caused change. And that change has been so profound that we are calling it reform. And as part of our Modern Reformers series, we're talking about Bono today. And for me, it's a little bit of an interesting and very fun assignment, because my first question is, where do I start? And my second question is, where do I stop? So my intention today with you all is to share who is Bono in his work, as an art, in his faith, in his life, and in the action he takes. And so that's as advertised. You can let me know afterwards if we did it there. So Bono starts off his life as a beautiful baby boy born in Dublin, Ireland, and is coincidentally the cosmic twin of my dear wife, Amanda Berg, May 10th, 1960.
She wasn't born in 1960.
She's born a different year.
Yes.
A different year. But part of what causes me to sort of put a picture like this up is Amanda and I had done a retreat with a gentleman named Michael Fish, and he encourages, as a spiritual practice, have a baby picture of yourself and have it somewhere that's visible so that you can see and remember that innocence, that spark of all potential, right? And when we see somebody's baby picture, it just makes us just love them, right? We see the baby. Bono, as a public figure, is a recipient of a lot of criticism. And there's all kinds of people that would have critical things to say, probably like that way of any of us. When you look at the baby picture, you see that spark of innocence and potential. It's a beautiful thing, and a reminder of God's love. Bono had an older brother named Paul. He still does. This is a family photo of them in Dublin in the early 70s. And notably, Bono's standing next to his mom, Iris, and his dad, Bobby. Bobby's a postal worker, and he passed away 10 years ago or so. But notably in Bono's life and his career, he had tragedy as a young boy. His grandfather died, his mother's father, and at the funeral, she collapsed and died a day later. He was a teenager, early teenager, like 14 years old, and was all of a sudden kind of in this place of being in family with his dad, his brother, and a sense of loss that propelled probably his creative energy and is maybe the reason he became a rock star. Notably too, and in Ireland particularly, his father was Church of Ireland, Protestant, and his mother was Catholic. And they were going to raise the boys kind of in both traditions. So they had a household that grew up with a lot of spirituality and faith tradition. But Bono reflects that he didn't necessarily feel comfortable in any religious environment. Either church had a sense of not holistic with the other, and that sense of tension would have been there. As a young person, he went to this progressive school in Dublin called Mount Temple. And this is a place that where he met his friends, and they formed this band U2. So there's a famous story that the drummer named Larry Mullen Jr. posted up on kind of the school notice board that he was starting a band. And these guys came to meet in Larry's kitchen. And Bono reflects that he made the cut. Their first name of their band was the Larry Mullen Jr. Band. And whenever you see him in concert, there'll be an occasional reference that Larry is the boss. And he was. He was the one who set it all up. Some of these sites that are here are all photos from Dublin, and the real U2 geeks kind of go around and take pictures of them, and almost in an iconic way. People ask, how did Bono get his name? So as a teenager, going with his friends, they would walk through town, and they were probably inspired kind of in an artistic way in the 70s, and really inspired by punk rock. And so they gave each other kind of wild names, nicknames as teenage boys. Bono became the singer for this little band, the Larry Mullen Jr. Band. He couldn't sing initially, but he had such charisma that he just kind of was out there, out in front. So his friends started calling him Bonovox as they would walk by this hearing aid store. And that means, in Italian, good voice. And then over time, it's just shortened to Bono. And the name has been such a nickname that was so relevant and meaningful that his family calls him Bono. You know, that's a name that just was so good. When we think about their inspiration, rock and roll is there, really, really there. So Bono talks about times when he and the guys would go to rock concerts in the 70s, and notably, he's made reference to Patti Smith and to the Ramones and to the Clash. And seeing the Clash, which is this kind of punk band from England, was very profound. On their tour in 1977, he says he can't remember the set list or much about the music, but it was transformative. I just know that everything changed that night. And it changed in the sense of the possibility and the potential, the human potential to make change, right? That the world is more malleable than you think. And he saw this inspiration in these rock bands of people that can express themselves, express their art, and bring about change. This is an early picture of the guys. So Bono in the middle there, Larry in the back, he's the drummer. On the right, Adam, and to the left, Dave Evans, who also got a cool name called The Edge. And The Edge is a name similar to Bono, which is so profoundly sticky that even like his mom called him The Edge. What we can see in this band was that Larry at that time played the drums. Edge was learning guitar. Adam was kind of a rich kid who had a bass and he thought it'd be cool to be in a band. And Bono was a charismatic kid with a big loss who was looking for peace and found his way in the band. Interestingly enough, from the beginning, they've had a business model where they cut their revenue by quarters. And they have a model that's like very community oriented in terms of business. Bono, when he refers to himself, thinks of himself as a quarter of a person in the band, right? He knows he's made whole with these other folks around him. When he refers to himself, he refers to himself as a half a person with his wife, Allie, right? And so there's this really deep recognition of connectivity and relationship. Their first album studio album was released in 1980. And what you'll see on each of these slides is, just as a kind of a gauge for what's there, it's the names of the songs, so some of them might be familiar to you. And then on the bottom of each slide, I've put, just as a gauge so you can kind of see, and this is interesting if you look at it kind of over the track of time, what their worldwide sales were for that album, and then the peak position, and I'm putting it here in kind of the US chart terms. So at this point in their career, they were an indie kind of a band, and peaked at 63 on the US charts with this album. And we're kind of in the young sort of punk phase. Their second album was released a year later. Some of the songs I was playing as we were coming in were from this one. This is October. Similar amount of sales worldwide, and had even a lower peak position in the US market. The one song that I enjoyed playing that was part of sort of the prelude is called Scarlet, which is just a song that just has the word rejoice over and over again in a loop with the drums and the rhythm behind it. At this point in the guy's life, they were very connected in a kind of a faith community called Shalom in Dublin. And it would have been a community of people that would have been like a Bible study. They're surrounded with a lot of maybe rock and roll and drug culture around them, but they found community in this kind of Christian community. And as the band was getting started, there's a big deliberation around would they be a Christian band or a band. And I think they concluded, and perhaps in Ireland, they concluded they are Christians, they're a band, right? But they didn't choose a pathway towards sort of Christian music. When you kind of look across the spectrum of music in pop culture and pop music, you see how we maybe kind of get into different buckets of marketing genre. And there's bands that call themselves a Christian band, and bands that don't. And then bands that, like these guys, maybe transcend it all and don't really care, but have their presence of spirituality as part of it, part of their life. So as part of, when we look on the sort of lexicon of U2 songs and U2 work, there's so much spirituality in there. And if you kind of just even do a bit of a Google on what are the Bible references, you find so many songs with so much reference to prophetic literature, to the Psalms, to the Gospels. October is the album that folks look at as the most spiritual, or the one that had some of these most of these things in there. I personally don't know if you can actually call something the most spiritual. They're probably all equally spiritual, but there's a heck of a lot of reference within the album October. Bono, just after his mother died, went to this school at Mount Temple, and very shortly after met a young lady named Alison Stewart. And she became his best friend and kind of solace probably in that time. They got married here in 1982 at Ali's church in a part of Dublin called Raheny, and it's Church of Ireland. So in their life together, Church of Ireland has been kind of more probably present, I'd say, in terms of family events, things like that. And it's a Protestant side, right? It's the Anglican community, Church of Ireland. This is one of the, Bono and Ali are one of the kind of premier marriages in pop culture and rock and roll, where they're still married today and are getting ready to celebrate their 36th wedding anniversary. Now this is the album War. It was released in 1983, and it's got some fame with Sunday Bloody Sundays as its main single. You can see the worldwide sales were quite a bit larger than previous albums, and because of Sunday Bloody Sunday, it picked up more airplay and peaked higher in the charts. Now, on your handouts, I've given you kind of a blue sheet that has some song lyrics and things like that on there. When I was, this is just my own personal kind of story of when did I learn about U2, right? When I was 13, I was in a Sunday school class in North Dakota, and I had this teacher that said, guys, there's music out there that talks about God, and you should know about it because it's inspiring. And they played this song, 40, from this album. And 40 is the last song on the album, and it's largely from Psalm 40 and Psalm 6. I'll sing a new song from Psalm 6 and the chorus from Psalm 40. For much of U2's career in the early days, they ended their concerts with this song. And it had this sort of sense of benediction, if I'd say it that way. And a sense of when the crowd would be leaving after a night of rock and roll, thousands of people down dark alleys arm in arm. They're singing, I will sing a new song. Right? And it's so profound in terms of the benediction that's offered, but in terms of just the change it's having with people. And part of that experience, I think, is what makes so many people who go to see U2 just have this sense of, you know, falling in love, being inspired, wanting to be part of it all. I tried to put the font on this page large enough so even if you didn't have your reading glasses, you could see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Good.
Okay. See here. U2 is noted for their live performances. This is the next album that came along. I remember this as a high school kid in North Dakota, and probably the first time I bought the U2 album, you know. And it's got some great songs on there, and it starts to have some more ambient kind of music happening in there. Notably, kind of the single Pride in the Name of Love, which is really inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. and is used even at presidential inaugurations in the United States. This had similar sales, a little bit lower than the previous one, but similar peak on the US charts from the singles. As they were rising in their fame, and so now U2, with Unforgettable Fire, has got more of a global audience and some more global celebrity. The famines in Ethiopia were drawing a lot of media attention. And U2 had a sense probably of greater good from the day they started. They had Amnesty International friends and Greenpeace friends and others that would be part of the kind of booths on the side of the show afterwards. But I think this is one of those moments in time that kind of maybe was a pivot shift or a change in Bono's arc as a rock star and advocate. And it was the single, Do They Know It's Christmas? So this group of pop stars from the United Kingdom came together, and you may remember this song, and it's one that has a provocative lyric in there that Bono is known for. And I thought I'd even bring that out and pull it here. So the song is written by Bob Geldof, who has the Feed the World shirt here, and Midge Ure. And Bob Geldof is a very charismatic figure himself. And there's a sense of anger with what was happening with the famine and how do we bring people's attention. And they think they found a place where music could intersect with getting the message out to try to raise money, but also raise awareness for this justice issue. In the song, there's a lyric that Bono says that says, "Tonight, thank God it's them instead of you." And it's every time whenever you hear this song, Bono's voice lifts up there, and in some ways, because he's such a good singer in that point, it lifts up. It's one thing that got them some more worldwide acclaim, because it was very recognizable. But you hear that lyric and you're like, what? And Bono's reflection in 2014 was he didn't really want to sing it. Midge Ure describes it. Bono had a problem with it. He said, "Why would you say that? That could be perceived as brutal and unfeeling." And Geldof is thinking about Bono and said, "Are you really sure that's what you want to say?" And I said, "I'm really sure." Bob said, "I'm really sure." I went through it with him rather like a director goes through a line that an actor may not be happy with. And then Bono listened to his director and went ahead and sang the line. Midge Ure says, "But we're not saying rather them than us. We're saying how lucky we are that we don't have to deal with that kind of extreme poverty." And after that explanation, Bono said he got it, and he turned that line into a magical moment on the record. You'll notice that the peak sales on this single match anything U2 has done before in terms of its position on the US charts and its worldwide sales. That brings U2 into this place with that crowd who's still kind of wanting to do more with Ethiopia. And on July 13th, 1985, they had this giant concert called Live Aid. And notably from Live Aid, Queen had this incredible performance. And it's kind of seen as a highlight of their, just their prowess as a band. Princess Diana was involved. It had a lot of worldwide media attention. And it had the spotlight. And so the bands that were the support acts, like U2, were seeing it as, here's a chance for us to really kind of make a difference and be part of this, and a chance for us to be seen by the world. So the band had a whole lot at stake in there in terms of, we've got to get this right, guys, in terms of having this be a moment for us that can really help us be seen. So their plan was to play this song called Pride, in the Name of Love. It was their biggest single thus far in their career. Well, they start off with this song, Bad, which is what I'm playing in the background right here. And on the album, it's a 5-minute song. Their set had like 12 minutes long time frame as this opening band, and they played Bad for 11 minutes and 51 seconds. And the reason they did is because Bono kind of went on his own way. And what they'd been known for as a band in the smaller venues they played was something that Bono describes as breaking down the fourth wall. So you have the band on the stage and the audience, and they'd always be trying to get into the audience, have the audience back into the band. And so it's always this kind of creative question they're pursuing. And in a small club, maybe in Boston or Dublin, it works great, because Bono can just leap off the stage into the crowd, carrying a white flag for Pride, and it all works beautifully. But at Live Aid at Wembley Stadium, with like huge amounts of security and a just giant crowd, it was more of an obstacle course. So the reason that Bad lasted 11 minutes was because Bono relentlessly was making his way into the crowd to be part of breaking down that fourth wall. Well, afterwards, the band, the guys like shrugged their shoulders and walked away from there like, this is the worst thing ever. We missed our chance to play our single for the world. And they're like, Bono, what'd you do? Right, because they're back there on the instruments keeping it going while their lead singer with the mic and all the charisma is fighting his way through the barricades to get the people. Bono reflects, we had bad sound, we had bad haircuts. We didn't end up playing the hit Pride in the Name of Love because the singer went off into the crowd and the band wanted to fire me as a result. Well, what really happened was the whole world saw this passion and commitment and that breaking down the fourth wall, and it actually like lifted them up to a higher place. It brought U2's message and passion and feeling and heart to the scene of Live Aid, which is all about addressing poverty, addressing this issue of the crisis in Ethiopia. And that's a place where the magic started to really kind of come together. Bono ends, it turned out to be the best day of our life, one of the best days of our life. Explain that. Ask God, He probably knows. So after that, there was World Vision invited Bono and Ali to join them in Ethiopia to see firsthand. So up until this point, it's more of kind of an awareness, but maybe not a relationship. So Bono and Ali spent a number of weeks down in Ethiopia and are visibly and relationally touched by the people. And I think this is a point where the commitment and the conviction just goes deeper in terms of what are they about. This concert's cool, it raises money. And part of the criticism that was happening with some of that celebrity kind of raising of money for these crises was, oh, we raise a bunch of money and feel good about ourselves and we drop the money in. And I think Bono saw, and as he was there are systemic issues of justice that are here that don't just get fixed by sending money for someone to buy some wheat to airdrop into a place where there's a famine, and then we walk away from it. It's a much more complex problem. A problem of government, a problem of corruption, a problem of infrastructure, a problem of justice. And I think that frame of reference about it being a problem of justice is kind of what drives what you see as Bono continues in his spiritual and life journey towards advocacy, how to address systems and have it be a justice matter rather than a matter of charity. So you can see how U2's kind of on its arc with Pride, Unforgettable Fire, and art album sales. They get a lot of media attention with the Live Aid activities and Band Aid. And then this album comes out. And this is their kind of their pinnacle of their career in terms of album sales. So in U2's journey as a band, they hit #1 in the US charts with The Joshua Tree. A number of singles that are on there that you hear in radio airplay still. And from that point, they become a band that's critically acclaimed at the Grammys. They become a band that's critically acclaimed with their music. And they become a band that's popularly accepted and acclaimed. And so they're hitting top 40 airplay. And a lot of their albums, as you'll see as I keep on flipping through the albums, kind of stay at this #1 position. So they're seen as a band who produces #1 albums, and they do. This album has the top sales peak, and it's in kind of the history of the world, for pop music, the top 50 or so albums of sales. #1, by the way, most sold album of all time. Does anybody know what that is?
Beatles?
No, not Beatles. That's a good guess. It's a similar time frame, but Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the rise of the Joshua Tree, they had a number of shows in the United States, concerts that were at the stadium level. They played the Coliseum here in Los Angeles multiple nights in a row. That was the first concert that I saw with U2 personally, was in the Coliseum in Los Angeles. I remember the ads back then, and they had a special show in Tempe, Arizona for $5. And at that show, they filmed it, and they did a lot of the film use for this new movie called Rattle and Hum. On the road in America, they were inspired by the blues and the desert and the American landscape and the American heritage and the music spirituality from the gospel singers. And so this album, Rattle and Hum, kind of merges out of there where they've got some new tracks, some live tracks, and this movie that comes out. We were in college during the time the movie came out, and I was on the cross-country team with your beloved Pastor Tim. And just the intersection of life, the cross-country guys, we were all ravenous U2 fans. And back then at Cal Lutheran, we had a radio station called KRCL, which was kind of it was before public radio. It was cable only, and we had a program in there. Students could come in and just be the DJ. And as part of a radio station, you get a pre-release for an album. So this album was released in October, and I think we got it in September. And you can imagine that all of these nerdy U2 fans overplayed every single song on that album before it was even released, right? They'd be like, and now a special song from U2, and we had this great thing. Anyway, the weekend that Rattle and Hum opened, we were on a cross-country meet up in Central California and went out as a team to opening night to see Rattle 'Em Up. It was spectacular. Spectacular moment. After the Joshua Tree, they had such critical acclaim, but they kind of went away and wanted to sort of reinvent themselves. And that's one thing you see in U2's music and you see with Bono, where there's kind of this constant, and it's probably the quest of an artist. I don't want to be in the rut of that thing before. A thing that you see with U2 fans frequently is, yeah, it's a good album, but it's not as good as the Joshua Tree, right? And I think there's a struggle with popular bands where they want to have their fans like what they're doing, but they're also moving on to something new. They're moving into new space creatively and artistically. This album, they did a lot of work in Berlin, and there's a number of kind of more techno kind of things that come out of it. But you can see pretty strong sales still, and it's still top chart in the US. As part of their tour, they had the same kind of creative energy. They have another studio album comes out. Same again, peak position in the US, #1. Record sales even further down. One song that's kind of cool on here, they did a lot of things collaboratively with a lot of different artists. The Wanderer is a song that Johnny Cash sings. So Bono and the team made all kinds of friends with all kinds of amazing people. You know, he has duets with Frank Sinatra and B.B. King. Sorry, B.B. King. Yeah. Johnny Cash. They continued on this techno journey. This was an album where a lot of U2 fans kind of started to walk away, and you can see by the sales there. But they still have this peak position of #1. And part of why they walked away was just, it's the creative push that they had where they're trying new things, doing new things. I saw this show in Los Angeles, and it had this amazing technical experience. And as you see kind of U2's creative journey, as they try to break down that fourth wall, they're trying all these new extravagant things. In this particular show, they had a giant lemon, like a spaceship, and they came out of it. And I remember being in the crowd, and when Bono was coming on, and an opening band was Rage Against the Machine, and so the crowd has all this energy is up, and Bono comes on to this song that's pop music, kind of a techno beat. It's a song called Pop Music, and he's coming out like dressed like a boxer with his hoodie over his face, but from the very back of the stadium. And it's like he's a boxer kind of walking in the whole time, you know, and it was amazing. Just the electricity was there that day. But you can see, for somebody who's all into sort of that look and feel of the Joshua Tree, this might feel and look different. Bono describes sort of that creative process as being honest, about pursuing things with honesty. And I think for an artist, they pursue it from themselves, for their God, for their own life. I think that one of the challenges of being an artist who's publicly acclaimed is you have that other pressure of what's the crowd, the audience, what's the marketing guy want. And so to stay true to being honest, I'd say is a spiritual struggle. If you don't have your reading glasses, this quote says, "We don't have to please God in any other way than to be brutally honest." That is the route not only to a relationship with God, but the route to a great song or any work of art or merit. On the journey towards advocacy, Bono becomes crucially aware of the role of working with governments and working with public figures and being a friend and enrolling their influence in this help. This is a famous picture where, interestingly enough, the gentleman is here in the middle, Bishop bishop from Ireland, Dermot Martin, we had a Church of Ireland magazine when we were there, and he came and did an ecumenical service at the little church where we attend. And there's a picture of Bishop Martin on the front, and Amanda just standing next to the side of her. Yeah. Anyway, this is a famous scene where Bono and the members of Jubilee, so Bob Geldof is there, Quincy Jones, and then a friend of theirs who became a really important partner, Harvard economics professor Jeffrey Sachs, were part of the delegation for Jubilee 2000, and they came to meet the Pope. Bishop Martin said, "Holy Father, this is Mr. Bono," and he is a singer and has done a lot for the Jubilee 2000 campaign. Bono presents the Pope with a copy of, and I think this is one thing that Bono does, where he sees these as holy works, the poems of Seamus Heaney. And he brings these little books of poetry wherever he goes to see world leaders and gives them as, here's a gift, the very best we can offer from Ireland, maybe from us, is this gift from the poet, Seamus Heaney. And when he gave the Pope this collection of poems, he also took off his glasses and handed him his glasses. And then there's this really great picture where the Pope puts them on. Yes. Bono says he was a great showman.
Yeah.
True to the description, the Pope seized the shades, put them on, and grinned mischievously. Interesting, we kind of think about Bono as a person who's always wearing sunglasses. And the reason is, and what he's described publicly, is that he has an eye condition that makes his eyes very sensitive to the light. So it's worked really well with a rock star persona to always have sunglasses on. But he's actually wearing them for that reason. Bono describes this work of the Jubilee 2000, the Drop the Debt, was an effort that persuaded first world nations to forgive the debt owed to them by poorest countries. So you can see Bono is attacking the institutional breakdown which is a root of poverty, or a root cause of poverty, and is pursuing justice. And he's giving this reflection into Vatican Radio. He said, an extra 52 million children are going to school because of that effort. And Bono says the church deserves incredible credit for its role in securing debt forgiveness. And the Catholics should be made aware of how their faith was central to these efforts. After the death of Pope John Paul, Bono said that we would never have gotten the debts of 23 countries completely canceled without him. So he's got a profound point of connectivity, knowing influential people influence communities. Large communities can make a big difference and drive change at systemic levels. And so you see how Bono kind of makes the connection between making friendship with people in position of authority and pursuing influence for large communities. In October 30, 2000, the YouTube group put out this album, All You Can't Leave Behind. It's got a number of beautiful songs on there. One thing of note that's interesting here, if this one did not peak in the top of the US charts, #1. It had strong sales. On the album cover, it has this picture of Charles de Gaulle Airport, and you see that there's a gate that's referenced here, J33-3. That Bono put that in there, kind of on the cover art at the end. It's Jeremiah 33:3, and it's referred to as God's telephone number. But that's what you see sometimes, where these kind of threads of the faith just get woven into the art along the way. Next album that came out, and maybe I should make note of the previous one. Amanda and I have been to a number of U2 shows over the years, and this particular show and their touring schedule spanned the time frame when we had 9/11 in the United States. And after 9/11, I think it was in October 2001, or early November, Amanda and I were at a show at the Staples Center, and at the end of the show they played Walk On. And U2 has had this incredible way of just being connected with the situation of the world. They've had just a sense of compassion. Walk On was played, and as they played Walk On, the names of all the people that were part of 9/11 were in lights kind of flowing up the side of the walls. Right? So you see this kind of a prayer of this final song, and almost like a lifting up of the names, ascending all around. And then Bono, at the end of it, just kind of comes over with a sense of just deep reverence, takes off his jacket, which has an American flag sewn on the inside of it, and just puts it over the mic stand, and they just kind of walk away in a sense of reverence with a spotlight, a lone spotlight on the American flag, with the names going up, and this beautiful music being played. It's profound. This is our next album in 2004. Amanda really likes the song, I mean not you too, but if I were going to point out a sort of a fun song to hear, Yahweh, the song Yahweh. She loves it. Okay, so as you can see, as the band's arc has continued to grow, now there's new things that are coming around. So when I think about the One campaign, it seems like it was forever ago. But actually you can see it's kind of come kind of late in their career in terms of their creative success. But One was founded in 2004. Bono was a key founder of it. And initially it was kind of a coalition of a number of groups. So we had Bread for the World and other organizations that we as a Lutheran Church were part of that became part of One. And the name was inspired by the belief that one voice that comes together with political left and right, business leaders, activists, faith leaders, and students can change the world for the better. So you see in Bono's advocacy a real intentionality around inclusion. One of the things that can be a problem, and we've seen it, is where advocacy groups are so politically aligned to one side or the other that they sort of disenfranchise all the rest. And Bono recognized that's not a way to really change the world. We've got to be very, very inclusive and have that conversation. So since 2004, these are just some of the highlights from One's current website that they've accomplished and we've accomplished probably together. Right? A lot of it's around advocacy for countries, so US, Canada, and EU, really fighting for transparency and really a fight for getting more money from the oil and gas revenue in Africa to be used for fighting poverty. In terms of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, they've helped secure $37.5 billion with a B funding, and then another $35.7 billion between 2005 and 2014 for advancing the development assistance in the third world. For their work, Bono and his two friends, Bill and Melinda Gates, were named Time Person of the Year in 2005. And Bono states there, this is a generation in which we can eradicate poverty. So they're going for a really, really big idea and recognizing that the resources are present in the world, it's just we have to allocate them properly and help fix these systems of injustice to bring about profound change. In 2006, later that year, President Bush invited Bono to speak at the National Prayer Breakfast. That speech, which I'll play a segment for here, is in full copy inside this little book called On the Move, and it's a beautiful little book. I actually have a copy of it up here. If you want to see it afterwards, you totally can. But let me go to this segment so you can see a little bit of what Bono talked about there.
Poor, the scriptures say, who cannot maintain himself, you shall maintain him. You shall not lend him your money at interest, nor give him your food for profit. This is such an important idea, do you believe that this is how Jesus begins his ministry? His first words are from Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, he says, because he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. And Jesus proclaims the year of the Lord's favor, the year of Jubilee. And that's Luke 4. What he was really talking about was an era of grace. And we're still in it. I mean, God may well be with us in our mansions on the hill. I hope so. He may well be with us in all manner of controversial stuff. Maybe, maybe not. But the one thing we can all agree, all faiths, all ideologies, is that God is with the vulnerable and the poor. God is in the slums, in the cardboard boxes where the poor play house. God is in the silence of a mother who has infected her child with a virus that will end both their lives. God is in the cries heard under the rubble of war. God is in the debris of wasted opportunity and lives. And God is with us if we are with them.
An additional spin-off from one was recognizing the power of market. And so they have a program called Red. And you may see these Red products. You can see them at the Apple store. An Apple iPhone that's red or an iPod that's red is actually part of this Red campaign, where a section of the Red funds, or all the Red funds actually, with 100% go to the work of fighting HIV/AIDS with no overhead being taken, has thus far helped 110 million people across 8 countries. And I have a bit of a commercial here to show you about what Red is.
We all live for someone to die for, someone to take all the weight of the world for, someone to stand beside when nothing but bullets fly. And when the day's done, everything I've done, anything I've lost is worth whatever it costs. 'Cause not sure I'm done, nothing can hurt me now. And love shouldn't have to be a war, but if I have to, I'll fight more. No one's gonna tell us what to do now. You and me against the revolution. You and me against the world, there ain't no confusion. We're gonna shout it out, we're gonna scream it loud. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Everybody's here with us, there's no illusion. We're gonna turn it on, 'cause we don't give up. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. And love shouldn't have to be a war, but if I have to, I'll fight more. No one's gonna tell us what to do now. You and me against the revolution. You and me against the world, there ain't no confusion. We're gonna shout it out, we're gonna scream it loud. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Everybody's here with us, there's no illusion. We're gonna turn it on, 'cause we don't give up. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. You saw me against the world, there ain't no illusion. We're gonna shout it out, we're gonna scream it loud. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution. Everybody's here with us, there's no illusion. We're gonna turn it on, 'cause we don't give up. Tonight we're gonna start a revolution.
So with Red, we see Bono, Jeffrey Sachs, and some other brilliant business leaders acknowledging reality. People buy stuff. And for companies, it's goodwill marketing to be part of the solution for big problems. People that are in charge of companies care about people too. And so this red campaign is simply a way of connecting in the market with the issues. So far to date, they've raised $500 million through that, and you'll see it continue to go on. So when you see that little red icon, that's what it's about. Bono was very impacted by a lot of leaders. One of them was Nelson Mandela, and they were importantly part of the campaigns for anti-apartheid in South Africa. Bono takes this sort of inspiration from Mandela. Millions of people are trapped in the prison of poverty, and it is time to set them free. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made and can be overcome. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Bono takes that and brings it to us. And maybe many of us as U2 fans kind of catch that and say, wow, right? And that's why you can see how this rock and roll singer has become so impactful and influential for us. They have another album. You can kind of see now, 2009, digital music comes online. You'll see these worldwide sales are just dropping off because now we've got streaming and other things. But they're still staying kind of at the top of the charts with their new albums. This is one that, for many people, you might remember this in the news. It became a sort of a controversial story because they were collaborating a lot with Apple, and this album was freely downloaded on people's phones overnight, magically. And a whole bunch of people who didn't want it on their phones totally felt like, upset. So you had a lot of news stories around that one. In their album covers, you see all kinds of different art and different things. This one is Larry, who's the drummer, and that person he's holding is his baby boy, his son. And it's a song of kind of reflecting, protecting of innocence. Now, there's some great video clips that have been put together through Fuller Seminary. And I've selected one of them to show you. And as we talk about sort of that sense of the honesty of the artist, the honesty of working with one's faith. Mother Teresa said, honesty and transparency make you vulnerable. Be honest and transparent anyway.
So one sentence answers, just one sentence.
That's hard for me. I am Irish. Okay.
One thing that you've learned about God through your reading of the Psalms. One thing.
He listens.
One thing you've learned about yourself through your reading of the Psalms.
I don't listen enough.
What is one difficult or troubling thing the Psalms have required of you?
Honesty. I did it in one word there. That where I come from, I'm saying that is minimalism. As I look through the scriptures, I just see a bunch of the dodgiest people ever collected in one place. Murderers, adulterers, egomaniacs. I mean, they sound like most of my friends. They sound like me. And David's treatment of Bathsheba's husband, it's mind-blowing that he had such darkness in him. And, he murders, he really gets her sent to the front line to get those men out of the way so he can take advantage of the missus. I mean, it's mind-blowing. This same character, through the alchemy, that is grace and redemption. We know God doesn't have favorites, but if he has, you think it might be David. And you think, well, how? And for me, it's revealed in the Psalms of David. The honesty. Whether he wrote them or not, or attributed to them. They are marked by honesty. And I want to argue the case for artists, or potential artists, who might be listening in on our conversation and are not giving expression to what's really going on in their life because they feel it will give the wrong impression of them. We don't have to please God in any other way, really, other than to be brutally honest.
Sure.
That is the root, not just to a relationship with God, but it's the root to a great song. In fact, it's the only place you can find a great song. It's the only place you can find any work of art,
Sure.
of merit.
You see a lot of pictures of Bono with celebrities. Bono was a close friend of President Bush, and most recently, kind of on their tour through the South, he stopped in at President Bush's ranch, where Bush says that Bono is the real deal. And what they're reflecting is that sense of shared commitment to save lives and to focus on big problems that are justice problems. Most recent album is out right now. They're touring right now, and also has a peak position in the U.S. of #1. You'll hear a number of songs on the radio currently. The last song on that blue paper I gave you, we've got 40 on one side and 13 on the other. And the reason I have that there is just, it's the most recent, last song from the most recent album. It's a poem that Bono wrote with the inspiration of a professor from Trinity who said, "Write as if you were dead." And in Bono's reflections, these are poems and letters written to his loved ones. So this song, number 13, is kind of a psalm written by Bono for his kids. In 2016, Glamour magazine, who has an annual award for Woman of the Year, named Bono its Man of the Year. Melinda Gates, who was the 2013 Woman of the Year, said, "Bono's one of the most outspoken and effective advocates for women and girls I know. As an activist, he's using those skills to get the world talking about the fact that ending extreme poverty begins with empowering women and girls." In the article that's referenced here, Bono says, when we first learned about Glamour giving him the first Man of the Year award, he called his wife, Allie, to give her the news. He said, "I asked, did she think I deserved it?" She wasn't sure. Bono tells me, "She said I've got work to do." I want to show you kind of this arc of advocacy and pursuit of justice and show you kind of where it is now, right? This award came from this kind of most recent focus on a thing called Poverty is Sexist, where the One campaign has focused in on the world's poorest women who survive on less than $2 a day. Bono says women bear the burdens of poverty. They're far less likely than men to have access to food, clean water, education, and health care. Laws in many parts of the world don't protect them from sexual violence. By establishing poverty as sexist, Bono is making it clear that powerful men can and should take on these deep-rooted issues. This is a video segment, another 2 minutes long, that U2 is using to close out their shows these days. So I know it took us to the end there. The walkout song is number 13. It's on the on that thing there. Any questions or comments or thoughts?
Outstanding. Very good.
Yes.
And if the terrors of the night
We
come creeping in,
we have up here this little book on the move and the new album.
stealing children from your
When Amanda and I lived with our family in Ireland, we had an opportunity to meet Bono here and there a couple times. Oops. Sorry, that's my wife. Anyway, through a mutual acquaintance, we had him sign this book for us. So there's an actual signature.
Did we pray over Anna before she went to Africa to do work? Is that correct, Anna?
We had an opportunity to connect with Bono, and Anna was going to on a study group in Lesotho, and we had some conversations there with him. One thing there, just about that Lesotho trip, I asked Bono because I was worried about safety, you know, and I said, I don't know, you know, I'm worried about her being down there. And he looked at Anna and he said, with her steely eyes, I'd be more worried about them than her. So even then, in that conversation, he had this sense of empowerment, right, for women and women leaders, and the importance of that. So, yeah.
I'm curious, about the political division part, and you showed him, there with President Bush, and he seems to have so many extremes in his circle of people with different ideologies. Has he ever commented on how he brings these people together, how he gets them to kind of keep those differences from interfering with the work they want to do?
Yeah, I think what I've read and seen is that he's pursuing shared interests and shared commitments. And when, like in Washington, which is good for us to understand because we see the sort of the left and the right, he'll go to the different senators or folks, and you may not agree on this whole platform of all things, but there's a thing we do agree on, and he's there to talk about it with that. And just it's the interesting thing about celebrity, because there's this really famous rock star with a bunch of cameras behind him, a politician wants to talk to him, right?
Yeah.
So he's learned that that particular attribute can be really beneficially used to pursue justice. Yeah. And I think that part of it is he's got the charisma and charm that he's there actually making friends too, and you see that sort of in this, if you look at sort of the sentiments of folks like President Bush or others that talk about him, he's making friends, so.
And I think about 2 years ago, Focus on the Family interviewed him, and he made the distinction between orthodoxy, like orthodox belief, versus orthopraxy, like his action. And he's so focused on like reforming, what can he do to change and empower, and like he shows his faith by what he does and like what he involves passionately himself in. It's just and he's like amazingly, like he does his homework, educates himself on, like he knows what he's talking about, and I think that gives him, he's not just this rock star using his like
even more credibility, right?
He has credibility because he really does the research and talks with people and is informed and involved. And it's like,
Yeah.
that kind of blows people away. They just think it's like rock star, right?
Yeah.
He's so much more than that.
Yeah. Well, all of that, thanks Marcel for that. All of the video links and all that are actually kind of, I have a little paper that I don't have a handout on, but if you wanted to get an email of me, you totally could. Thanks guys for coming over.
Good job.
So there we go. Cool on that.
Thank you, Eric.
Anyway, thanks for coming.